This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. However, I'll give you a clue. We're the ones who inspired you to go ahead and like and share them on social network and with all your friends and neighbors, because Martin County Roofing and independent insurance agent Rudy Howard now present the African American scene on WPSL Digital 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast, webcast to the world, and hosted by the one and only Rudy Howard.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Always glad to be with you here on a Wednesday night. I like saying that again, Wednesday night.
Yeah, more natural. You're more used to that.
Yeah, that's for years we did Wednesday nights.
I think we picked up a couple extra listeners, though, when you temporarily for a while we were doing the IRSC basketball.
Yeah.
When you moved to Mondays for a while. But, hey, we got a few more listeners. And they've kind of turned the rest of our audience around in favor of the things that Rudy says here on the show. So you can chime in if you like, right?
Yes. So if this is the first time you listen to the show, we're going to have an open mic night tonight. Well, let me just tell you, a nice treat for you next week. Next week, my guest is going to be the president of IRSC. He's going to be with me for an hour. He's talk about what's going on at the college. There's lots of good things going on there. I'm really delighted that I was able to get him to come on. And then in the following week,
Tom Kindred can't even get him on his show, and you got him here. Huh?
Yes. I feel pretty lucky about that. And so we're going to have an open mic night. Now, if this is the first time you've listened, generally what I do is I lay out some issues, and then I tell you what those issues are going to be, and then I encourage you to respond, and I will usually go back and fill in the details about those issues. One of the things that I want you to do, I've been trying for the last couple of weeks to get you to do it, and you haven't done it, but I'm going to try again. I'd like to know, why do you vote the way you vote? What makes you a Republican? What makes you vote Republican? Item number 2, why black people vote Democratic? I'm going to get into that because, a lot of times I hear people say that they are that black people are critical of black conservatives because they're free thinkers and not on the plantation, and that most black people on the Democratic plantation. Well, that's not true, but we're going to get into that. Then item number 3, I want to expose you to Jimmy Carter's energy plan from 1978. He is oftentimes criticized as being a very poor president, although as universally everybody agrees that he has been a fantastic human being since being president. But I want to make the case that he proposed in 1978 an energy policy that if we had followed it when he first announced it back then, we would all be better off today. And I don't know how many of you knew this, but Jimmy Carter had put solar panels on the White House in 1979. Ronald Reagan took them down. Think about that back then. Back then, Jimmy Carter did that with the idea that we needed to reduce our dependency on fossil fuel. But we'll talk a little bit more about that too. And again, if you want to comment on any of that, the number is 340-1590. But before I get into my subjects, I'm going to make a personal plea to you tonight. I don't care what your party is. What I am asking is, if you have children or you have grandchildren, I'm asking that you vote out any politician that refuses to take action regarding gun rights, I'm asking you to personally do me that favor. They do not deserve to represent us if they are opposing any change to gun rights, because we had in place a law that banned AR-15 type rifles. It expired and it didn't get renewed. I'm sorry. I don't want to take your guns. Please don't say that. Don't call up here and say that, because that's a lie. And that's the same lie you've been telling for 20 years. I don't want to take your guns. Obama didn't want to take your guns. Biden doesn't want to take your guns. But I want to take your AR-15. I don't want anybody to have an AR-15. There is no reason to have an AR-15. And I hope some of you heard some of the testimony, and I know some of you will feel as though it's theatrics, and maybe to some extent it was, but when the bullet from the AR-15 damages a child to the point that they need to get DNA to identify what child that is, put that mental picture in your mind. Put that mental picture in your mind. Then I want you to imagine that being your grandchild or your child and having to go to the morgue and look at that. Is anything worth that? Is self-protection rights worth that? Is an AR-15 for self-protection rights?
We have to protect ourselves from elementary school children? That's kind of strange and weird, but you know,
it's
a reality we have to face.
It is a reality. You know, that particular weapon is destructive beyond basic understanding. When the doctor was on today testifying, what he saw when he went to the emergency room, he broke down in tears. And he sees that all the time. So imagine the impact of what he was looking at if it brought him to tears. I mean, I would ask you, and I'm going to ask you at the close of the show again tonight, please, if you have a representative, i.e. Marco Rubio or Rick Scott or Brian Mast, that will not vote for some form of gun regulation, they need to go. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, they got to go. Because there is no excuse for that at all. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now. So let's talk about...
I was going to say, soapbox is okay. You're talking about people's kids who are dead.
Yes.
The kids are dead. So the soapbox is not a pedestal that's not necessary sometimes.
Yeah, you know, and I got to tell you something, man. You know, I'm a pretty emotional guy anyway, so I was listening to some of that today, and I mean, the tears just rolled down my face. I saw my little grandkids, and I thought to myself, oh my God, I can't even begin to imagine how horrible that would be if that was my grandkids in there. But anyway, let's talk about one of the things that I often hear, and again that phone number is 340-1590. One of the things that I often hear is that black people are on the reservation and they just vote willy-nilly Democratic, and that's because they can't think on their own, and they criticize black Republicans, and black Republicans are free thinkers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to put an end to that tonight. I'm going to give you the window inside the world to let you know why we have voted Democratic. We're not on a plantation. But one of the things that black people are not anti-government. You know, conservatives and libertarians see the government as intrusive. It should have no place within our society. And I am going to say to you categorically, we don't believe that. Now, I will be the first one to tell you the government has not always been fair when it comes to its treatment of black people or indigenous people, and even Asians for that effect. But by and large, they've been more helpful than not. Example, they were instrumental in allowing Ruby Bridges to go to elementary school. They were instrumental in people being able to go to college. So the government has, while it has made mistakes, at the end of the day, they have more often than not been very supportive of things that were important in the lives of minority people. And Steve on line 1. Yes, sir.
Hey, Steve, you're on.
Yes. Hey, Rudy. How you doing?
Okay.
Good. I want to take you back to McKinley and Bryant's presidential race. And Rockefeller and Mellon and Carnegie all got together and gave them basically millions and millions of dollars to beat McKinley. He outspent him 5-1.
Right.
That started the big money in government. That started stooge politicians. And we've just continued it today with this new Supreme Court that's ultra-fascist. Money's unchecked. Can't tell where it came from. So we've become a bought and paid for economy. And this is what happens, chaos.
Agreed.
Because you described the three stooges here, Mask and the senator and Rubino.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they are, is the three stooges. But these people keep voting for them because they have a hope and a dream that they sell them. It never becomes reality, but they keep fooling themselves that, yeah, these guys are the answer. The answer is to take the money out of politics.
Oh, I agree.
And get people involved. Close we used to have, you couldn't buy on Sundays. Couldn't buy anything with gas and medicine. Why not close the day we do elections to everything but gas and medicine so you got nothing to do but vote?
I would be okay with that. Listen, I proposed something today on Facebook that I proposed 6-7 years ago. When you and I were coming along, when you turned 18, you registered for the draft.
That's right.
There was no question about it. You went down and you registered. So why can't people
women
register?
Don't, and they still don't.
Yeah, why can't people register to vote?
And the other thing is when you register to vote, you sign an affidavit saying that you swear that you're you, and then they want you to prove it when you go vote.
Right.
That's stupid, too.
Yeah.
You've got a voter registration card. You've already sworn that you're you, and the state issued it to you.
I agree.
So the state was already satisfied.
I agree.
So, I mean, we just keep compiling stupidity on stupidity because people will not get involved. They just sit on their cellulite and whine.
Yep.
And besides getting you drunk, wine's never done anything. You know what I mean? It's crazy. But you're right. It's got to be personal involvement. We've got to get the money out of politics. And people have got to care about America again.
Yes, we do.
John F. Kennedy said it best. Ask not what you can do for your country or what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Amen. Amen. Yep.
That's what I've been saying that all my life. But until we get the money out of politics and the crazies and the actors, and you talked about Reagan, I worked selling solar panels under Carter when the government paid half. Now remember, before electricity, Florida was all solar, hot water. It was solar, period. Then when Reagan came in, he killed that program,
Yes,
like he killed mental health.
Yep.
And look what happened. You know, now we're going back to solar 30, 40 years later. Gee, like it's a great idea.
Just think,
This
and you know
is an
that's
old
why
idea.
that's why I brought that subject up tonight, because I went back and I looked at some of his goals and some of the things he had proposed in 1978, 1979. Can you imagine? I mean, I guess you were involved in it. You're the only person
I
I
was
ever known that
involved in
was
it.
involved in it. Can you imagine
Yeah,
if
it was
we were
50-50.
if we had been doing that still? What a wonderful position we'd be in now.
Oh, yeah. And back then, and all you had to do was put in 2,200, and the government paid the other 2,200. And you had an 80-gallon tank with panels on the roof, endless hot water, and your electric bill was slashed down to almost nothing. Now they've got them panels where you can actually generate electricity and slash your FP&L right out of the picture.
Right.
So it's just people have got to stop worshiping football and start worshiping freedom.
Amen. Amen.
Because, you know, they're two different things, but they seem to think that sports are more important than your way of life and how you're governed, and they are wrong, very wrong. And be surprised what's going to happen. I say in the next year you're going to see a recession you won't believe. And it's all because of confusion, disinformation.
I hope not, but
and
you might
people
be
not
right.
being
Yeah.
involved. So I'll let you go.
Okay,
Thank you for your
Steve.
time.
Thank you for calling. Okay.
Bye-bye.
I hope he's not right, but there's a good chance that he is. But like I said, okay, so part of the reason that African Americans is because we have not been anti-government. The government has frequently stepped forward and helped to make things a little fairer for us, like being able to go to college, being able to attend a school, you know, those kinds of things. If it wasn't for the government, those kinds of things just would not have been possible. So that's why when black people view the government, while we're not always happy with everything that they did in the past, in the long run, they've usually come back and tried to remedy some of the things that they've done wrong. And yes, Jay, how are you, sir?
Oh, good afternoon, man. I'm doing great. Good to hear your voice, man.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I was just listening to your conversation, and you were talking about why African Americans tend to go with the Democrats and all. Well, I can only talk about myself and my family, and with me personally, it was because when I came back from Vietnam and I got back home and I met up in my first campaign I ever worked on was with Shirley Chisholm in 1972. And she was a remarkable woman, African-American woman. For some of the folks out there that don't know who Shirley Chisholm was, she was a congressperson, and he started in 1968. And she ran for president, first woman ever run for president in 1972.
Yes, she was.
And my mother was, on a campaign. She was on a campaign thing, and she told me about it. So I went down and my mother introduced me to her, And the rest is history. I've been with politics all of my life. Even when I was working for local government, working for the city of New York, I got very involved with the union and politics. And the unions saved the workers in New York. They were very strong, and they didn't tolerate a lot of nonsense. About taking away their salary, like they do now, like they do here in Florida, with DeSantis, doing all these obscene things. They didn't tolerate that. They fought for your rights, for your pay, for you to have sick leave, which is very important. Sick leave is one of the things a lot of people take for granted. But when you have a chronic illness, you'll wish you had sick leave.
That's for sure.
You wish that your job gave it. And I was very fortunate, and I stuck with it. And I was, just all the things that made me who I am today, and how I progressed, was because the union and the Democratic Party that supported the unions. And then came Reagan, 1981. He put a club. He killed the unions. He killed it, and that was his motivation to be president, to do away with unions, because he'd been preaching about it before he became president.
Yeah.
And that's what he did when he became president. And and we're fighting now to get back into that. And people down here, and it seems like in the southern states, they don't really know the real value of collective bargaining and being able to have control of,
I agree.
Safety on the job and all of that stuff. And,
they have bought all of the crap that they've been sold by the conservatives about unions.
Yeah.
They bought it lock, stock, and barrel. That it's bad, and it hurts them. And no, and you know what? Here's what I say. And I had this debate with somebody just recently. Mm-hmm. You don't like unions, right? No, I don't like them. And I said, well, what about lobbying? Lobbyists spend 10 times the amount of money as unions. They actually write legislation and give it to members of the government to pass. How you feel about them?
Yeah.
They don't have nothing to say about that, right?
I'm telling you.
Yeah, they don't have nothing to say about that.
The biggest mistake that was made is when we let Citizens United come into law. The conservative, back to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Let them come in, and what they're doing is they ruin this country, because you got all these big corporations, all these billionaires are controlling the agenda of this country. That's why the gun manufacturers and everybody else, they're not worrying about anything, because they got all these most of these in the Republican Party under control. Just look at the Senate; they just cower. Yeah. When they voted, they have all kind of excuses not to raise the age from 18 to 21 for if you're not 21, you shouldn't be able to even get. They shouldn't even have that gun on the market. Strictly for the military. that was the biggest mistake. It shouldn't even be on the market.
It was off the market. Remember, they passed that back years ago.
In the 90s. Yeah, I remember that well. But that's the biggest problem. And I heard that Thune, when he spoke, I thought he was a pretty smart Republican senator, and he was making a statement, and he actually said it on CNN. People they need that the AR-15 because they hunt and kill the wild pigs with it. They kill a raccoon with it.
If they shot a raccoon with
they
an AR-15.
They got so many other rifles that they will hunt before the AR-15 came out, but yet they got to get this one so they can tear the animal apart.
That's right.
You won't even
exactly.
Know
Yes, exactly.
You look like a hamburger. Come on, man.
Exactly.
This is a man that's been in the Senate. I don't know. He's 20 years or better. At least 20 years. He's been in the Senate. Yeah. He knows better, but he's been cowed by the people giving him money that he had to say something. So he said something so stupid that it was just idiotic what he was talking about. That's why they wanted so they can kill these wild animals that come into their on their property or something. Yeah. I mean, these people are out. They're just ridiculous. They make all kind of excuses, but it's going to be up to us. I'm going to say this, and I hope people listen. The Democrats need to be more aggressive.
Yep.
And don't be talking about what we're going to do about the gas prices and the food and the baby formula. Talk about how you're going to get these guns off so they don't kill any more of our babies.
That's right.
Talk about that. Talk about making sure that these guns are off the market. That's what you need to be talking about.
Agreed.
And that's the key. You got to get to what's going on right now, because this is the time when, it's happening, and it's happening very regular, and it seems to be the gun that everybody wants with these people that love guns. This is it. So we got to get them off the market, change the laws and get them off the market, and let people know that in November, if you don't change it now and Republicans get in, they're going to make it worse. You haven't seen anything yet. This is just a test run.
Yeah.
And you think you got a democracy now, you won't have a democracy because they're going to set it up. If they take charge, they're going to set it up for 24 to bring Trump back. And then, Putin and everybody going to be happy. All of the, those people over there and those autocracies will be very happy. And that's what's going on. And people need to wake up and think about saving America and not worrying about the gas price right now. Make that the main thing for voting against Democrats. Think about the big picture.
Agreed. Thank you,
Thanks
sir.
a lot, man.
I appreciate you. All right. Thank you. He's right, but because it's smoke and mirrors. They're waving the gas price and inflation at you and hoping that you're not going to pay attention to the other part that's important.
Keep you focused on the distraction so somebody can run in there and pull a fast one.
There you go. So now I explained to you that blacks have voted for the Democratic Party, not because they're on the plantation, because the government has been more often than not the savior for black folks. I mean, just think back on the little kids that went to school because the government went in and demanded that they be allowed to go to school, which is kind of ridiculous that the government had to do that, but we had to have that done in order for the kids to get a decent education. Now, in addition, while most of my white brothers and sisters were perfectly willing to live by what big business was willing to do, that was not good for us. Big business completely ignored us back in the day. Completely ignored us. You weren't able to get into the management training programs, even if you were a college graduate. Even a lot of the HBCU grads who, business or otherwise, most of them went into some kind of teaching profession. A lot of teachers coming out of HBCUs. So there was no confidence that we were going to get a fair deal by business. So while my white brothers and sisters have always leaned heavily toward the business community as a means for success within society, that door was closed to us until maybe the last 30 years. That was not an option for us. And a lot of professions, like I'll tell you quite frankly, like my profession, the insurance business, part of being able to be a successful insurance agency owner is to get prior experience. And if you look, I attended a program, I guess it was 7 or 8 years ago now, that was put on by the Independent Agents Association, where they were looking to try to develop the expertise of some of the minority independent agency owners, because there just weren't that many out there. Less than 1% of the independent agencies in the United States are owned by minorities. And that's because to get into the independent agency system, you have to have experience. You have to know how to go out and attract markets. You have to know how to put deals together. And that's a byproduct of having worked for somebody that be able to do it. So that's so we never had the opportunities as some others to participate. So as a consequence, government was the first place where black people were able to get some success. And if you ever, I lived in the Washington, D.C. area. I lived in Columbia, Maryland, and I ran an office in Greenbelt, Maryland for many years, which is only about 5 miles from the D.C. line. And there was a tremendous amount of very wealthy African Americans who had made it through employment with the government. Those jobs were available to us. So now I would say there's much more of an opportunity for African Americans to make it in the business world. But traditionally, that was not the case. So what happened? You went with what you know. If you go to D.C. now, there is still a huge number of black professionals in various parts of the government in D.C. So that's why African Americans have gravitated toward the Democratic Party. The government has been oftentimes the savior for some of the things that ail us. I mean, just think about one of the landmark cases, Brown versus Board of Education. That decision stopped segregation of schools and saying the separate but equal was not right, and that we had to have the same opportunity for education as everybody else. So don't say that we don't have interest in being thoughtful, because some of us are very much free thinkers. We just happen to believe that we were going to get the best shake from the federal government, which in many cases is true. I didn't. I happened to be pretty lucky because somebody gave me a shot to do some things that typically people didn't get a chance to do. But I'm not naive about the what that is all about. Then we go to the judicial element of the government. It has gotten things wrong too, just like the legislative branch of the government. The federal branch of the government have gotten things wrong. Judicial branch has gotten things wrong too, but again, more often than not, unlike any other element of society that we've been exposed to, is they sometimes go back and they fix some things that they messed up. For example, bad decision in Plessy versus Ferguson. They went back. Ultimately, they righted that wrong. They have protected black property rights in some cases. In other cases, they have not. One of the cases that I spoke to you about recently that they finally made a decision on, again, is an example of why black folks believe in the government. They took that resort property from the black couple, that black family in Los Angeles, and over the years they finally returned that property to them. In the past, I guess it's like 6 or 7 months, they realized that was an injustice, and they returned that property to them. That's an example of what I'm saying about the federal government. Now, some of the black conservatives would say, no, it is the government should not have interfered. No, the government should have interfered. There was a wrong done. They went in and they went and corrected it. Should have never happened in the first place. And our government can go in and fix things that have been done incorrectly. And it should. Okay? So I tell you all of that, and even like with affirmative action. They've upheld affirmative action. Now, let me explain to you my personal opinion about affirmative action. I hate it with a passion. And I hate it because I'm a competitor. And I don't think any man is better than me when I'm working at something particular. I'll go up against anybody one-on-one. I'm no problem, no fear. But it's not going to be fair. I have to accept the unvarnished truth. The competition is not going to always be fair. Therefore, I have to, with reluctance, accept the concept of affirmative action. I wish there wasn't affirmative action. And someday I pray that there won't be any affirmative action, but the reality is that there is. And I'm going to let me just give you some examples. I have a very good friend of mine that's retired from, I think it's Westinghouse. He built defense radar systems for government. He couldn't tell me everything that he does, so he had his two master's degrees and a bachelor's degree, and he was on the precipice of getting to an executive level position, which would have meant a massive amount of money difference in his retirement. And he couldn't get there. You know why he couldn't get there? Because that next position came with a membership to a country club. That country club did not accept minorities in it. So therefore, while they never told him that that's not why he didn't get the job, and others who had come after him got the promotion, I talked to him and I said to him, you know, it's pretty clear why you didn't get the job, John. And after he and I talked about it, he said, I think you're right. He said, I really hadn't given it any thought. I said, they couldn't get you. I know, because it happened to me. So that's why I know that's a problem. And we got Winnie on line one. Yes, Winnie.
Hi, yeah, my friend.
Okay.
Good. I had, they, like Wall Street, they made a movie. Are you familiar with this man named O.W. Gurley?
Who?
He was the wealthy black man back then of like Wall Street. You heard him before?
There was a guy on, you talk about in Tulsa?
Yeah, uh-huh.
He owned a hotel and a couple of other businesses, very wealthy, that got burnt down. Yes, I think I know who you're talking about. I can't recall his name, but yes, I have heard of him, yes.
Yeah, and they had made him to flee. They made him, his wife, flee. They did flee till they went to L.A., Los Angeles, California. And he didn't flee. He would have got killed right along with the rest of the people.
Yes. I know exactly who you're talking about now, yeah. He got out of there, yeah.
He got out of there, yeah. That was smart thing he did too. Yeah, and Rosewood, Sylvester, you know, I saw the movie
Yes.
Rosewood,
Yeah.
Sylvester. He refused to leave. They were warning him, his mother, to leave. You got to go to Gainesville. And he refused to leave. So I got on top of Sylvester and Roosevelt. He said he refused to leave because they bought that land, everything. And most all them folks, he got killed or something. when most all the folk got killed, they would have did like Shirley.
Well,
and they would have flee. Their life would have got spared. Oh.
Well, I got to tell you something. It happened more times than people really want you to know. It happened in North Carolina. It happened in Ohio. These were successful African American communities, and the townspeople got mad at the wealth that had been accumulated by African Americans, and they destroyed the towns. Destroyed. I just found out about one not too long ago. I think it's called Colfax, Louisiana. I think it was Colfax, Louisiana. I was listening to my master class. I take these master classes, and she talked about that. I didn't know anything about that. The same thing. It was a very prosperous town, and they burnt the town down.
Wow.
Yeah, so those are things, and those are things they don't want everybody to know.
No.
But people should know.
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen again.
So what? Okay, that guy girl who they got up out of there. Why? So why the rest of them didn't leave like they did? Rudy Howard.
Because they had poured their heart. If you ever talk to some of the people I saw some of the interviews.
Yeah.
Oh, Winnie, they had poured their heart and soul into that community. It was thriving. They had businesses.
Yeah.
They had lawyers and doctors and accountants.
Mm-hmm.
It was a thriving community, and some of those people had worked their fannies off to get it to where it was at, and the thought of just walking away and leaving it was just
leaving it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's tough, man.
Yeah.
At least girl and his wife, they left that behind. They did. They would have got killed right along with the rest of them people in Tulsa.
Yeah.
And the white lady, she accused the black, because it's something like Blue Rosewood, a black man had assaulted her, and some kind of stuff be a lie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It always don't be true, and it caused a lot of black folks death and things like that here. False-faced lies, and that's terrible. But anyway, there's something to look at in some black history. I tell people about it. Good to know something about your black history, something.
Yeah.
And I like history myself. I like history. Okay, we'll be talking.
Okay. All right,
take
thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
All right, Winnie, thank you. Faithful listener, her and Jay and Steve, my most faithful listeners called tonight. So listen, let's talk about, and we Steve and I touched on it briefly, but as I was doing some preparation, I came across this information on Jimmy Carter. And, everybody always talks about how they would like to have an honest person in the White House. And Jimmy Carter was honest to a fault, to be honest with you. He was honest to a fault. I don't think there's been anybody in that White House, any more honest than Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter, in 1978-79, put together an energy plan. Can you imagine that, Cliff? I mean, in 1978-79, Jimmy Carter had the foresight to know that we needed to become energy independent.
And he put solar panels on the White House.
Yes, he did.
Wow.
He put solar in 1979.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
Well, that's not that long ago. I walked into this room in 1979. kind of been here since, on and off,
Yeah, so
but it is a long time. It's a long time.
that is a long time ago. But the thing is, I think what floors me is he had the foresight to see that was something a direction that we needed to go in. And he pledged to get us away from foreign oil. And Steve actually was into selling some solar panels, which he's the only person I've ever known that was doing that way back then. There's plenty of people doing it now. And his goal, he had a very modest goal. By the year 2000, he wanted to be 20% renewable energy by the year 2000. So from 1979 to the year 2000, by the year 2000, he was hoping that we'd be 20% renewable energy. Imagine, just imagine if we had stayed on that path. This is 2022. I would bet you we would probably be pretty close to 50% or better renewable energy at this point. What do you think?
It's possible. Look what Elon Musk is doing now. It's the secret to it all is the batteries that they're creating now.
Yes.
The super high charge batteries, especially for the cars and trucks. Did you see the semi, the tractor trailer truck, the electric tractor trailer that Elon Musk recently introduced in they do these little YouTube videos called Elon Musk Rewind.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're called. And they put stuff out there that, like there's a car in the making that's going to be an electric car that's going to be a $5,000 car. Could you imagine how hard it would be to get financing for a $5,000 Tesla? Well, of course, it's not going to do all the wonderful things that the $30,000 or $75,000 or $100,000 Tesla will do. It'll have you'll have to probably get your own internet service provider for it, satellite, of course. But could you imagine just getting in the car, telling it where you want to go, and then sit back and take a ride?
That's Jetson stuff.
I mean, well, at least in Jetsons, it looked like he was driving it,
Yeah.
These things here, they know where to go, and some of them are artificial intelligence, and they can make decisions. They have to make decisions.
Well, that's not so far-fetched. They got They got their driverless bus that services Tradition. Have you ever seen it?
No. Wow.
Yeah, they got a driverless bus in Tradition.
When I saw the tractor trailer, I mean, there was no driver in it. He's standing on the front edge of a stage, and the semi came right up behind him and stopped right there where he was standing, right in front of it, just inches away from it, with no driver in it. So that's trusting the product, I guess. But could you imagine that? And they talked about how it would go all the way across the country with all kinds of stuff. People move. The moving industry won. My goodness, when they start moving products with the electric semi-tractor trailers, there's not going to be any diesel. You get behind a bus or you get behind a semi and you can smell the diesel fuel or the exhaust.
Yeah.
There won't be any exhaust on these electric vehicles.
That's right.
And that's what the problem with the global warming comes from, all of the stuff that gets in the air from your car, Not just the car, the lawnmower, too. Everything that cranks up or uses gas, it's just putting that stuff out in the air, and that's what we're all facing now. If we could get off of the oil that's coming from over in the Middle East, if we could get off the oil addiction, get into some new kind of energy power, and even we'll even try some new alternative energy sources.
We can listen. I got. I have a hybrid.
Okay, yeah, that one's
okay.
It does. It has a little hydrogen stuff in it.
Yeah.
The water.
I got gas and electric combined.
Yeah.
I get 40 miles to the gallon.
Yeah, that's twice as much as what I get.
Right. I get 40 miles to the gallon.
But my 40 miles now, it's going to cost a whole lot more than it did. Well, that's twice. That 40 miles to the gallon, that's twice as much as what I've ever gotten out of any of my SUVs.
Yeah.
And if you run the air conditioner in the hot summer, guess what? It's going to take more.
Yeah, but that's I get that from my car, and it runs smooth. You got to take it in for service every 5,000 miles. Every 5,000 miles, bam, I got to go to the dealer. But other than that, and it doesn't have. Let me tell you part of the reason why some of this hasn't come to pass. When you don't have combustible engine anymore, you don't have the need for parts, you don't have the need for labor. So, and let's face it, part of the value of the vehicle is in the additional parts and stuff that it has to get to keep it running. So that's why I think there's been a reluctance in giving us.
I had to learn something totally new about the new cars. I don't have a hybrid. I've got a RAV4. But you know what I found out about the RAV4? It's full of microchips. Actually, it was the alternator went on it. And when the battery went, everything went. The power steering. Silly me, I'm out there looking for, where is the basin for the power steering fluid? There isn't one on here. There wasn't. It's all microchips.
Yeah.
So I replaced the battery for nothing. It wasn't the battery, it was the alternator. I got that other alternator in there. I got it rebuilt, and by golly, it works. Everything works. But still, with the air conditioner on in the hot summertime, it costs a whole lot more, and the gas is way too high. So I'm all for, let's get a bucket of ice and a fan and mount it on the dashboard.
I think one of the things though that we have to do, and we're going toward it now, is we have to move to renewable energy.
Yeah.
And we're down.
Or at least sustainable, yeah.
Yeah, we're down to the last couple minutes, so I'm gonna make this ask of you one more time, as I did in the beginning. I'm asking each and every one of you, I don't care what your party is, if you have kids or grandkids in this upcoming election, if you have a representative who does not support changing the gun laws, including getting rid of the AR-15, you got to vote them out. Because you know what? Forget your political affiliation. This is about your grandkids and your children. They deserve to be safe, and there should be no way that they should be exposed to an AR-15. Well, folks, I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in to the African American scene. God bless, and don't forget, next week I'm going to have the president of IRSC is going to be my guest. Be safe.
Hey, join them next week for the African American scene. And in the meantime, you can go to YouTube and watch some of the archives and find out how this show itself has actually came along and has its own evolution from the way it started to the way it is now. A whole lot better now. As far as the audience goes, hey, one other thing I got to tell you before we get out of here. This is WPSL, Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure